Order online at picassospizza.net.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to this Trainwreck Sports Podcast, where we are here to pay the bills. Jake Majka, joined by my co-host. He's back after a sabbatical. Ajay Cybulski. How are we doing? You had a nice preseason. You had a good training. You were the Jordan Phillips of this podcast, actually. You just took training camp off. You said ready for the regular season, day one, and you're here, ready to roll. And we cut Mike and Carson. Sorry,
yeah,
guys.
they're done.
Just kidding. They're off. They're on a well-deserved week off. Me and AJ are holding it down today. AJ, how you doing, man? It's on this beautiful August 26th.
It's great, man. It's football's almost here. I'm excited for the college football slate coming up this Saturday, so really looking forward to that. Back in school, so that's been a ride here to start down, toward the home stretch for school. So it's exciting times. I love the fall, man. The fall is it's my season. It's my favorite season. So there's a lot to look forward to, and I'm excited to digest this roster.
Are you a fall is elite person?
Though? I am a fall is elite. My birthday's in the fall. I love like the Halloween, Thanksgiving, college sports, NFL, NBA starts up, NHL, like everything's going. It's the best.
I'm in full agreement with you. We have to go to war with our friend Maniac, who's always adamant against the fall as elite team. I fight the good fight every year, but I'm ready, man. And it's feeling like fall a little bit here in Chicago. It was only like 68 degrees. It got up to today. I had sweatpants on for part of the day. Like it's been nice. Yeah. So right around the corner, like you said, college football coming up this weekend. But another sign is roster cut-down day. We're here. The Bills 53-man roster is official. Should we start with who got cut or who's on the team? I guess we should talk about a couple of the big. Let's just start with the broad strokes, the biggest things, the big notes of the day. Number one being Terrell Shavers making the team, making the 53-man for the first time in 3 years at that wide receiver position. That's a big one. Were you surprised? I mean, I don't think you were surprised, but it was just nice to see it finally get done. Were you just surprised to see how the room broke out, though? Pretty much straight down the line is what we said. No major surprises outside of Shavers getting that spot.
Yeah, I felt at the beginning of the week that the Bills were going to keep 6, and that's what they did. I just felt like neither Elijah Moore or Curtis Samuel. I mean, Curtis Samuel because he was injured, and Elijah Moore just because we haven't really seen much of him make a difference. I mean, in the preseason from what I've seen. So I thought both those guys would stay on the roster, and I think it just gives them an overall better room. And I like keeping 6 last year. I think you go back to last year, Matt Collins was that wide receiver 5 role that was kind of solidified for him. And they only kept 5, but I'm liking that they kept 6. The Shavers edition, I think, is huge. I was at an engagement party watching that game on someone's phone when that catch happened. And they obviously called it incomplete at first, but after the replay, I'm like, he caught that. The shin came down, the left foot was in. So I think that was really the play where, you're Joe Brady, Shane Buechele's out there. The play call is a play to Terrell Shavers one-on-one, and he wins that. That just shows how much they can trust him. And I think that, for Josh Allen, who's watching that on the sideline, that must give you all the confidence in the world when a guy comes down with a catch like that in a game that is meaningful for him and where he's going to go in his life. I think that was just an awesome moment for him, and I think he showcased all preseason, all training camp. I think the players have spoken very highly of him, and I was not surprised at all that he was the probably 6th wide receiver they kept on this roster. But to me, he's shown more than a Curtis Samuel and Elijah Moore at this point. So, I'll be interested to see how that shakes out with how those kind of the target share goes with that room.
Yeah, that catch that he made obviously is one of the best catches you'll see in a preseason game, honestly, in any game this year. What he made, the one thing that was nice about it, I really appreciated, is that he had a similar opportunity it wasn't in the end zone, but it was a similar go route opportunity that he had in that Bears game that he dropped. And it was like, damn, man, if you could have just grabbed that, like that would have been so huge for you in that. And it's just to have that opportunity come up for you again and make the most of it. I feel like that shows a lot to the team, to the coaches, to everything else. Like, I might have missed this one time, but once I got it again, I wasn't going to miss it. And that's kind of been his story. Like he has taken and run with every opportunity he's gotten with this team, plugged along, done what he needed to do. Clearly a favorite of Allen and just the rapport that they've built. So kudos to him, man. This is going to be an interesting way to, like you said, to see how he is used. Like where does now the conversation is, where does he actually fit between him and Elijah Moore and Curtis Samuel on this roster, because those are guys obviously with, much longer pedigree in the league. They have some real stature, actually, what depending on your mileage and what you think of them. They've produced in this league already. So it's going to be interesting to see how much opportunity they give him going forward. But yeah, that's the kind of story you want to see on Cut Down Day, is a guy like Terrell Shavers. So I'm really excited to see that. Apparently 26 isn't young anymore, though. That's what somebody was telling us in my comments. I said I put out the young wide receiver gets a chance. He said, not so young. I'm 28, bro. Like, I'm old. I get it. We get called Unc all the time, and you're lower and lower every day. So not a young wide receiver, Terrell Shavers, I guess. But hey, shout out to him. I got to go to the comments because my mom's in here. Shout out to my mom, Bridget, here, who's upset about Frank Gore Jr. and my second mom, Lori. They must be together watching this show together on Facebook. So shout out to them. Very sad about Frank Gore Jr. Frank Gore Jr., I think, will be on this practice squad, though. I think it was just, we were talking about him in the group chat the other day, specifically, if we're talking about the running back room. And it's really like, it's not that he doesn't deserve a spot. I feel like if it wasn't for the competition the Bills have right now in that room, he'd be on this team. A lot of people were talking about Ty Johnson, but Josh Allen calls Ty Johnson the best third down back in the league. They invested heavily into, Ray Davis, a high pick on him. They're not ready to give up on him. So it's just a numbers game. But I imagine Frank Gore they would love to keep him around if they can, right? Like,
yeah, of course. Yeah, it's very in the league, especially when it comes to running back. I mean, you see it around the league quite frequently. There's a lot of players that fan bases are like, oh my God, I'm so scared they're going to get poached, but they rarely do. It's a pretty actually rare thing. I think Frank Gore Jr. is a safe bet to be on the practice squad. And I think he's shown that he is an NFL running back, whether it's in the pass catching game or as a runner. I thought every single game he was out there, no matter what the quarterback was, no matter what the situation was, he was probably the brightest spot other than Terrell Shavers on the offensive side of the ball. So Frank Gore Jr. stinks that he did not make it. But again, it comes down to numbers. Ray Davis, 4th round pick, a leader in terms of how he came out of Kentucky. And I think they view him, very highly as a person and as well as his play. And then obviously Ty Johnson, I think, has done a lot. And I mean, I saw a hot take that people like Ty Johnson more than Ray Davis. I'm almost there with that. I'd have to see more, but I'm also interested to see how that shakes out behind James Cook, because we obviously know James Cook's going to be the bell cow, but I think we might see a little bit more Ty Johnson this year. And again, Frank Gore, his time will come, whether it's in Buffalo or somewhere else, and we'll see how that really shakes out.
I wouldn't be opposed to that, honestly, more Ty Johnson, or at least as much of a split. Like, everything you saw from him last year, it's a lot. It's a north-south game he runs, which you love out of a backup running back. There's not going to be negative plays from Ty Johnson. I'm not saying there are from Ray Davis, but with the guy who's a utility knife like he is back there, and he's not giving you any negatives, like, it's a guy, and he's proven it like over the last couple of years. And the pass catching is something that is extremely valuable to them, especially on those third downs. So I love the room. Wish there was a spot for Frank Gore Jr. And John makes a good point here. He might get poached. Like, it is. He's talented enough where a team might want to bring him in from the practice squad. But also, I hear this. So I do hear this is not to call you out, John, but this is a lot of thing that I see a lot from players going to the practice squad. Like, oh, they could get poached, whatever. But they don't have to sign somewhere if they don't want to. And just because they get an offer for, say the Saints call up, I'm thinking of one of the worst teams I could think of. Like, the Saints call Frank Gore Jr. and are like, hey, we want to give you a spot. He might be like, I'd rather stay in Buffalo with like the good organization, get the reps under my belt here in a place that I know and trust and believes in me and everything else. Like, it's all about fit and situation. So I'm not saying maybe Frank Gore Jr. will go to try to find an opportunity somewhere, but it very well be could that it's just the right fit here to grow as a player for this year and be on that practice squad and look for that opportunity if someone were to get hurt this year or later in the season. So there's a lot more machinations that can go around there. John also bringing up Shavers, going back to Shavers, will be a special teams guy. Absolutely. Like, that's obviously part of this. They needed some special teams help, especially with, Mac Hollins gone and some other guys from last year. They're looking for some replacements there. And this is an interesting thing from Steve. The Bills dress on game day. I believe Shavers gets a jersey and Samuel or Moore sits. I'm kind of in line with that too. Like, I could see that happening where it depends on what they need from the matchup, who they'll play, Moore or Samuel, because I feel like both those guys have the inside-outside flexibility that they're looking for in those backup positions. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. And I think also health comes with a factor with both those players. So that's obviously going to be a conversation. But I'm with Steve as well, and you, Jake, that I think I think his outside ability is needed more than having both Samuel and Moore on the roster, because I think Keon and Joshua Palmer are obviously your boundary guys, but really behind them, I mean, Khalil Shakir is going to be a slot guy. And then I know you said Samuel and Moore are interchangeable, but they're more comfortable in the slot, and I'm sure the Bills will use them more in the slot. So I feel like Shavers would be that first backup right on the boundary for Keon and Joshua Palmer. So I think that totally makes sense. I think Shavers will be dressed, but we'll see. I mean, again, it's hard to predict these things right now because we don't know what they really think and how they view the room, because we really haven't seen Curtis Samuel play at all. So where does he really stock up? We haven't really seen much from the starters at all this whole preseason. So it's kind of a lot of unknown. But if I was predicting along with you and Steve, I would say that Shavers does make sense as a game day active for his special teams ability and being that first backup boundary receiver.
Yeah, along the line. Yeah, agree with you all along the lines there. So the other receivers that got cut today: Deion Kane, Steven Gosnell, KJ Hamler, Laviska Shenault, and Christian Wilkerson. I would assume some of those guys are coming back on the practice squad as well. Let's run through the other guys on the offensive side of the ball who let's just run through. Yeah, let's run through quick who on the offensive side of the ball. Buechele, Mike White. We already talked about Frank Gore, Zach Davidson, and Latu both gone. And on the offensive line, Jacob Bayard, Travis Clayton, Mike Edwards, Dan Feeney, Richard Guriage. I don't know how to say that. Sorry, and Kendrick Green. I have never been able to get it. So it's not really any surprises along that. I guess the biggest surprise was Buechele and White yesterday. That was yesterday. We knew that news, but you would imagine, again, Buechele probably comes back on the practice squad at least, and none of those guys did enough. Like, Buechele had a great game on Saturday night against Tampa. He had a good showing, but none of them did enough to push Mitchell out with his experience and just honestly price tag that they're paying him to keep him around for this extra year. So any other surprises on the offensive side of the ball for you? Anything?
No, none at all. I mean, I guess SVP Cedric Van Pran Granger getting activated from the PUP was a little bit of a surprise, but he's obviously feel like he's ready. So I feel like the offensive line, the names there are all pretty much what I expected. Tight ends are all what I expected. I knew Jackson Hawes for his blocking ability, he'd be on there, and obviously a Zach Davidson who struggled. Besides his 62-yard bomb in the latest preseason game, I knew that that didn't really make any sense either. So not really many surprises offensively at all. I really thought. I think a lot of people that wrote about this or blogged about this or talked about podcasts on this Bills roster offensively, they probably hit the nail on the head in terms of who they cut. Because for me, this is exactly what I would have went with if I was projecting this roster back, a couple weeks ago.
I know, yeah, it is pretty paint by the numbers here, and we've got a Chris Cybulski, who I'm assuming is some relation here to you. So we've got a family affair here, and AJ's got family up behind his head there. But I wonder if Josh Allen is part of the determining who makes the 53-man roster. I would imagine he had input for Terrell Shavers to keep him around. Yeah. Like if we're talking like specific guy, like if they probably came to him, were like, could he play? And Josh like, absolutely. That's good. And also going back to the Ty Johnson thing, like him all summer, he's been calling him the best third down back in the league. That's why I was like, well, Ty Johnson's safe as can be on this roster. So I definitely think Allen has at least, and Mark brings it up here too. I'm sure Allen has input in terms of in a tie-breaking scenario. That's what I would think too. Like if they're really trying to decide between, they're going to take Josh's input as they should on the offensive side of the ball. Let's get to where we could be concerned here with the Bills secondary, because we have more updates. We know what the safety room officially looks like, and we know that Maxwell Harrison will start the year on the injured reserve for at least 4 weeks till he can return. But Trey White will be on the 53-man roster. We still don't know the extent, what that injury is, but they clearly think he'll be back at least before the 4 weeks. But the safeties are Taylor Rapp, Cole Bishop, DeMar Hamlin, Jordan Hancock, and then Cam Lewis probably fine. And Hancock and Lewis will probably be, I would imagine, pretty interchangeable with their dual roles there. But are you confident to start the year with Hairston on IR and with the unknown around Trey White? When we had a great discussion last week when the Trey White injury came out and just the overall concern in general. Like, how are you feeling about that room as now, AJ, we're here as we look to week one, like a matchup in a game where I gotta start thinking about injuries for the game, because this is not just, to me at least, and I'm going to harp on it over the next week and a half as we get ready for this Ravens game. This is not just any game. Like, I want the Bills to get the 1 seed. They have to beat the Ravens week 1. So this game is extremely important to this podcaster. But how are you feeling about the secondary in general after how it broke out today?
Yeah, I'm definitely concerned. I think the Trey White news is a little bit better. And I still think Trey White, whether he's on the field or not, I think he still is a liability when it comes to this defense. And obviously there's going to be holes in every defense around the league, but I do think Trey White is a liability with where he's at in his career. And now another injury he's sustained, I'm not too confident whether it was Trey White or Dane Jackson, who was also released, or, Jamarcus Ingram. But it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I think the safety position, I think I liked a little bit more what I saw from Cole Bishop against Tampa. He seemed a little bit more comfortable, like he was processing better. He was flying to the ball more, which is a great sign. That's what he was known for coming out of Utah. So I think the secondary is kind of at a wait and see. But right now, if you ask me going into Baltimore, I'm definitely very concerned with the way that this Baltimore team, can utilize both their tight ends, their receivers. I mean, they're loaded. They have DeAndre Hopkins. I know he doesn't have much of the tank still, but, DeAndre Hopkins, Zay Flowers, or Rashad Bateman, Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, Derrick Henry. I don't know if Justice Hill is still there, but he's always been a problem for the Bills in terms of those, underneath running back catches from Justice Hill. So I think this Bills secondary will figure it out eventually. But I just don't know if it'll be ready for week 1. And that's really going to come down to, how does this revamped defensive line look, and can they make Lamar Jackson uncomfortable? So Max Hairston news stinks. The Trey White news is good. But regardless, I really don't want to see too much of Trey White until when Max Harrison's healthy. I do not want to see much of Trey White after that. I think he's a depth option, and if need be, put him out there. He knows the system and they know what to expect from him. And I thought he's played okay during camp, but I want to see Max Hairston after those 4 games, hopefully be ready, ramp up, and get out there as soon as possible, and just get him ready for those big moments down the stretch.
So yeah, the Trey White thing is, I guess that's the biggest unknown to me at this point too, because there's been, early on in camp, I feel like people were hyping up his play, like during practices and everything, be like, damn, Trey looks like Trey, everything else. Yeah. In the games, it didn't show out that way. The first game, it was decent, but there were some red flags, like specifically some of the underneath routes that got above him, and just the tackling and the willingness to tackle and everything else, that especially when we're talking about Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, it presents a big concern for a week 1 matchup. But it is telling that they didn't think Dane Jackson was worth keeping on this roster at all, right? Like, that's a guy who got cut today yesterday, or I think it was today, along with Daquan Hardy. But that was like, we were talking about Dane Jackson. I think I tweeted it. Dane Jackson being sized up to start week 1 is a little terrifying. They feel confident enough in Trey's health, at least, but I feel like a lot of the hype and the excitement and everything around Trey was just the fact that he was back. Yeah. Right. Like it was like, I'm happy to see him back. We get all the clips. We're getting the hard knocks of it. We're getting him with the social team where everybody is great vibes. And I feel like the reporters can even fall victim to it as well. Like, they're spreading the good news about Trey. They don't want to be the ones that are like, hey, like, no one, like, who on that beat wants to be the one that's like, I don't know about Trey, guys. Like, I don't know if he's going to do it. Like, it's not like you want to be jumping out there and saying that. So I don't know what to believe about him at this point. And everything you said about it doesn't, like, all the pass catchers, everything else, like, this is going to be it's going to be like the number 1 versus number 2 offense in the league, or vice versa this year, probably between the Bills and the Ravens. Like both these teams are going to be just as high powered as they were last year. And we saw what happened in the regular season that can happen to this team. I'm just, the secondary itself, Cole Bishop did look better in that game. It looked like he wasn't thinking as much. He's just acting on instinct. Yeah. But again, playing against Kyle Trask is a little bit different than playing against Lamar Jackson. I'm concerned, but everything you said, it comes down to this defensive line. If we talk about the defensive line, let's see who they kept today. Rousseau, Bosa, Epineza, Landon Jackson, Javon Solomon. No surprises there. Hoyt suspended, but he'll be back around. Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Dwayne Carter, TJ Sanders, Dion Walker, and Larry Ogunjobi suspended. And then obviously yesterday, Jordan Phillips brought back to the practice squad. Basically no surprises there. They kept 10. It'll be interesting to see what they do once Ogunjobi and Hoyt come back, and the machinations and the maneuvering they're going to have to do there. But I've said it last year, AJ, on this show early in the season. I really had high hopes for this defensive line, and it was probably me trying to will it along as much as anything too, because that's what I'm a firm believer in, just building through the trenches for your football team. And obviously, Brandon Beane is too. Like that's why they've taken swings. They've tried to address this thing over and over again and haven't gotten it right. Is this the unit? Do you see the potential in this unit? Like, is there reason to see? Does it really just come down to Joey Bosa? Like we kind of touched on through different points. Like, if Bosa the key swing guy to whether this is an elite unit or just a good unit again this year, or is there other factors I'm not thinking about here?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to get their one of their best tests week 1, right? Again, against Baltimore, and their kind of revamped offensive line that I think's looking much better than last year. I think it is a group that has improved on paper. I think I've really, really liked what I've seen from Deanna Walker. I know he's doing it against 2s and 3s most of the time, but he's winning with consistency. He's showing flashes of not just having that ability to show power, but he does have a sudden burst for a bigger guy. So I think his pass rushing ability is something that is a little bit underrated. And I think that some teams, you didn't see it much in last year's film when he was coming out, but the year before when he was, touted as a top 30 prospect and probably going in the first round, but he decided to stay another year, you really saw that flash of his pass rushing ability. So I'm looking forward to this Bills defensive line and what they can do. I think they have great depth. Ajay Epineza is a solid rotational piece. Javon Solomon, interested to see what they get from him this year. Can he take a step? Landon Jackson, haven't seen too much from him at all. So I'm interested to see if they utilize him in any way the first few weeks, or they kind of just let him, do his thing and get ready and prepare more towards down the home stretch. But yeah, it's always important. I mean, the secondary will be tested, the defensive line. It's a great test for a team that I think needs to be tested right away, right from the jump. There's a lot of new pieces on the defense, a lot of guys being asked to step up. You obviously saw the veterans on the defense that know what it's like to be in those big situations. But for the young guys that are being asked to step up, a Joey Bosa, who's been in LA, who hasn't played in that many big games over there the last few years, I think this is just a great week 1 matchup just to see where this Bills defense is improved and where it still needs to improve down the stretch here. So it's going to be very interesting for me, both secondary and defensive line, what they can do to, get better. And if they can't rely on a, Trey White or Max Harrison in the playoffs because they're hurt or something, what guy is going to step up at that CB2 spot? What is Cole Bishop going to be able to play, in the box as a safety while Taylor Rapp is playing the deep third? So those are the questions I have, and I'm sure they won't be totally answered week 1 because there's a lot of room to grow, but it'll be a good starting point to see where they're at.
Yeah, I'm completely in line with you there. I want to see. It doesn't matter to me. Like Rousseau, I think we know what we're going to get at this point. Oliver, I think we know what we're going to get at this point. Jaquan Jones, I was surprised, honestly, after the play he got last year, to see him but just kind of penciled back into this starting spot was surprising for me. But they clearly love the guy, and it's just like, what else could they have really done at the position over the offseason and everything? So I'm fine with that. but it is like the growth of a Solomon, of a, what can Jackson offer in year one? What can Epineza in like the way in playing for like the future of his, Bill's career, whatever else. Like, I love a guy who's motivated like that. So maybe this is the year where Epineza, really, really pops out. And someone brought up Deion Walker, who looked awesome, especially in the other night. Had some really big splash plays against the Buccaneers, especially in the run game. Like, this is the youth, in what's the word I'm looking for? Wow, I just lost it completely. But just the youth movement that they decided to bring in, it brings a lot of unknowns, but they needed this revamp so bad. And so maybe it is just shuffling the deck and it's more of the same, but I'd rather have them go out there and give it a swing. And I liked what I've seen so far from a guy like Walker, from a guy like Solomon. Like Solomon, I think, honestly, was an underrated pick at the time for just the production that he had in college. And just like, when you have guys like that, who it's not exactly the traits you're looking for, like he's a little smaller, he doesn't have the arms, whatever, but when they just produce, it just seems like those guys, and specifically for the Bills organization, like those are the kind of guys they want to go to. He's just a guy who's put his hard hat on and goes to work every day, and they're going to reward him with some opportunities. Just excited to see what they do, but they're going to need this. All of them are going to be needed week one. Like, they're going to rotate everybody. They're gonna make it. Everybody's gonna have a chance to make an impact on that game, on Derrick Henry, on on Lamar Jackson. You're gonna have a chance to make them feel you in that game, and that's what I'm excited about to see with this Bills defense. Because if that defensive line can improve 5% from last year, 10% from last year, I'm just excited to see what that means for the holistically. We talk about the second. I got into an argument with someone on Twitter, figure that right, the other day, because they were, it was about Micah Parsons, and the Bills are not trading for Micah Parsons, but I was like, hey, that would help the second, because they said someone brought up trading for Micah Parsons. They were like, why not trade for a safety? I said trading for Micah Parsons would help more than any safety could do in this league, and they were like, I don't know about that. And I don't think that's just not the case. This Bills defensive line is elite. Cole Bishop is gonna look, 20% better than he would have at any other time, because it's just gonna make everything easier for that secondary. That's what this team wants. Like, they want to just, if Lamar's, he's gonna be scrambling around, but if he can't get to his first read, if they're getting stuffed at the line in the run game because the defensive line is just destroying the Ravens offensive line all game, then things are gonna look a hell of a lot better for Trey White in coverage in those games. Like, it's just, it all ties together, and it all starts with how they get that pressure up front. They just want to rush for. Hopefully this is the time that it comes through, because if it doesn't, then we're going to be sitting back here wondering what if again. I truly believe that is the biggest thing for these last 4 or 5 years that have held this team up in these moments, in these games. And they finally addressed it in a, I wouldn't say finally addressed it in a meaningful way. Like, the Von Miller thing was addressing it in a meaningful way. And whatever you want to say, if it was a bad signing or poor luck, it probably somewhere in the middle there. This is the chance to redo that. And we know they know how the urgency of it. The defense knows the urgency of it. They know they have to be better than that. Like, that's the thing, is a lot of people mention when they talk about the Bills defense how much they survived on turnovers last year, and they did. They thrived off creating a lot of turnovers. That's not something you can typically replicate year to year, or at least count on replicating year to year. But the Bills know that too. Like Sean McDermott and Bobby Babich also know that, and have known that all off season, and have schemed and tried to address that in different ways. So I'm bullish on what they can do, because more often than not, they've been able to put out a top 10, top 12 unit. I don't see a reason to think that it wouldn't be again this year with the talent they have.
Yeah, for sure. They're a revamped unit, a younger unit. Does Sean McDermott and Bobby Babich, how much do they trust rotating those guys against the Baltimore team? Can they trust a Javon Solomon to set the edge on a Derrick Henry outside zone run? Can they trust Deion Walker or TJ Sanders to eat up blocks so the linebackers like Milano and Bernard can shoot the gaps? I'll be interested to see the snap share between those, defensive linemen in that first game, because there's a lot of, that's where that game is going to be won. And that's how most games are won. But especially against a team like the Ravens, those guys, they need to be able to set the edge like a Greg Rousseau does great, right? He contains the edge on those runs. They got to keep Lamar in the pocket. They can't over pursue, and they got to eat up those blocks in the interior so those linebackers can make plays. A Taron Johnson can make plays against the Derrick Henry. So they know the test in front of them. They know what they need to do. They know what the Ravens bring. They're very familiar with each other. The last game the Ravens played was against Buffalo in the same exact stadium. So they're going to come out ready, and the Bills just have to defend their, home turf and hopefully come out with a win and move on. But yeah, this defensive line, I am looking forward to seeing what guys or person really steps up and becomes an X factor for this group.
Yeah, and this is great. This is simple as this. Like, it's a lot more juice, and I agree. Like, it's just a different talent infusion. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. It finally came back. It's an infusion of youth. It's an infusion of just fresh talent and everything else. I'm excited to see what it does. Let's go back there because Lori asked us about the quarterback choices. So let's touch on it for a second. Because are you okay with Mitchell Trubisky being the backup? Would you have liked to see Mike White get the chance? Would you have liked to see Shane Buechele get the chance? Or is this just like, I know Mike, our co-host Mike, does not care about the backup quarterback discussion at all. I love talking backup quarterback. Listen, backup quarterback used to be all I cared about before Josh Allen showed up because that guy could have been playing by week 3 for all we knew. So maybe that's still some of that brain in there. But were you surprised that they just kind of went back with Mitchell? Did you want to see Mike White or Shane Buechele get a chance on this team?
No, I think one of them is going to end up in the practice squad, probably a Buechele. I don't think any team. I think a lot of teams around the league have their quarterbacks that have been working in their systems that they'll keep on their practice squads as well. That's usually how it goes. So I like Mike White, just his pedigree and his competitiveness, but Mitch Trubisky does make the most sense. And I was really set that he would win the quarterback 2 battle after week 1 of preseason. And again, he just has the experience. He's been in situations. He was meaningful in Chicago for a couple of years over there. So Pittsburgh got an opportunity as well. You know what you have with him, and the Bills like that. And that's, hopefully we never see Mitch Trubisky on the field or never have to see a Shane Buechele play. But I would assume that Shane Buechele or Mike White's back on the practice squad and they run with Josh and Mitch. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I think that sounds pretty good to me. Like, let's go to Steve here. I'm very hopeful that Cole Bishop follows the same path that Bernard did a couple years ago, missed a bunch of camp, ended up being a stud at middle linebacker when we think we didn't have one. I think that's a fair comparison to bring up when it comes to Cole Bishop, because the year that Terrell Bernard became the starter, that whole preseason, offseason, there were not many fans of Terrell Bernard being in that position. There were not a lot of people that were confident in him. I'm not saying that Cole Bishop can replicate just becoming like a solid, to pretty good starter right away. But listen, the guy clearly, like, first of all, Utah has a pedigree. The school Utah has a pedigree of turning out pretty good secondary talent under Kyle Whittingham and just good defensive talent in the league. Kyle Whittingham is a great college football coach. He gets those guys ready for the league there. They run a great program there. So it's clear that they saw a lot in him just because of where he came from. Another guy that the Bills were interested in, Julian Blackmon, a couple years ago, also a Utah guy who's been not a star in the league, but has had a couple of, starting jobs and is still I believe he's with the Saints now or somewhere like that. So still in the league after a couple of years. It's a place that has been able to develop that talent, and Bishop has more talent than Blackmon does, and is still, I think that people's worries about Bishop are a little, and I've seen the talk. I've seen a bunch of different people comment, like, I've never seen the Bills try to make something happen like Cole Bishop's happened. I'm like, first of all, I don't know if there's probably countless examples I could think of. Like Damar Hamlin's one of them. The fact that, like, trying to make that happen more than anything else. But Cole Bishop, there's reason to want to keep making him happen. It's a 2nd-round pick from last year. Like, it's not like he hasn't shown, even in some of these games that he's shown flashes. Like, you see why they're excited about what he can be. I think you and I talked about it a little bit. It's more just, it's been the processing. It's been kind of catching up to everything and not playing instinctually. But when he plays, when you see him, you can tell when he's out there and he's confident in what he's doing. He's all over the place. He's in on every play. He's making an impact. He's in the right spots. When he does, but he just has too many times where he looks like he's a step behind or just trying to, in that split second where he's trying to figure out what's going on is what's hurting them. The Bills don't want that to ever happen. Like, it's the exact opposite of Taylor Rapp, right? Like, Taylor Rapp's he's just going like by hook or by crook, his own players, other players, whatever else. Taylor Rapp is a decisive football player. I think that's the biggest thing I need to see out of Bishop is just more decisiveness in how he kind of covers and does everything else. Steve asking, what do you guys think about the Patriots keeping 8 wide receivers? I didn't know they kept 8 wide receivers on their 53-man.
Good.
Hey man, listen, somebody's got to catch balls for them. Like they got to try to figure it out, I guess. I don't know. They're gonna line change 4 wide receiver sets. That maybe who knows what Vrabel's cooking there. I'm interested.
You got a lot of names. Matt Collins is on there. Javon Baker, Bourne, Butte, Chisholm the third, who had a really good preseason for them. Diggs, Demario Douglas, and Kyle Williams. So yeah, they keep 8 receivers. So that's interesting.
Like the only guys that you like, Diggs is obviously the number one. Like, we know what you're going to get out of Hollins. Everybody else, it's like, what do you know you're going to get out of those guys too? That's part of the thing.
They kept 6 defensive linemen. 6.
That's crazy.
Palmer, Farms Jr., Tonga, Keon White, and Milton Williams. They have 6, and maybe linebackers are thrown in there because they do have 8 linebackers. So maybe a couple of those guys. I don't know if they run a 3-4 or 4-3.
They must be running a 3-4 this year.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Just looking at those numbers, it's crazy how teams do it so differently. Crazy.
Yeah, Mike Vrabel. Yeah, they are running a 3-4 this year. So the 6 is still a little shocking. I mean, it's one backup for each spot there, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, and Josh Mooney, yeah, maybe they're aiming for a trade. Very well. That I'm sure we're going to see over the next couple of days, a couple trades, a couple of moves that guys that got put on a roster just because they're going to get moved somewhere else or vice versa. We'll see what happens. Josh also said, I think people forget the defense is good. I get that they struggle against elite teams in the playoffs that know them well, aka 1T, but it still is a good defense. It's not like they need to cut every player and reinvent the wheel. That's true. It's been last year though was not a typical unit. Like to thrive off the turnovers like they did, and they had some real leaky games. Like there were some real leaky performances. Specifically the Rams game. Yeah, like that was just a disaster. And just things you wouldn't have seen usually from the Bills in years past. But more of a willingness to kind of play those types of games too, I think was the nice sign I saw. Like, everybody worried so much about McDermott. Like, just let your Josh go outscore teams, everything else. Like last year they really did. Like if they needed to, they would let Josh go outscore. Now, was it because of necessity? Probably a little bit more necessity than anything else.
Right.
But it's still nice to see. I don't think that's something people give enough credit to McDermott for, whether you're a McDermott fan or not. Like the adaptability he's had over this run, especially with Allen and the different types of teams they wanted. I guess this is kind of the vision he wanted with the running offense and everything they had last year, but he was willing to put that aside and be one of the most pass happy teams in the NFL a couple years ago when it benefited them more. And now that the league has kind of shifted away from that and more towards this more balanced offense being more effective, the Bills have transferred right into that. I really think that the Bills don't get enough credit as an organization. And I know that Mike and I talk about this a lot too, for being ahead of the curve on these trends. That's the reason they are, so that's the reason they're in the position they've been in the last 5 years. Like they beat teams to the trends. They don't follow it. They are ahead of it and are ready for it every time it happens. They study these things. They prepare their staff, who then prepare these players well. That's why it's hard for these guys to come in. That's why it's hard for a Derek Forrest, who I thought, coming in was seeing the pedigree that he had and, knowing that he had success with Ron Rivera a couple years ago and everything else. I was like, okay, maybe he can come in and have an impact. But it was clearly hard for him to pick up this defense and pick up all the responsibilities and everything else. Like the Bills, it's not easy to just step onto this roster and pick everything up right away. And I think we've heard that from a lot of players coming in too, over the years. So that's just because the Bills think of other options. They think through everything. They put a lot on their players to learn and be responsible for, but because they do that, they're usually in the right spot, and usually it's a decent team. This is a great point. 3 distinct eras of the Bills. I would agree with that. Like this is kind of like the way that they've looked. I like 2023.5 with the Dorsey split there and everything else. But even like as much as I know it was the vibes and everything else, but when you look at the raw numbers for that first half of the year with Dorsey, it's not like it was like this horrible offense either. It's not like they were failing left and right. There was some major issues, but they've always been stable. They've always been solid on both sides of the ball. And I think it's because of that, because of these trends. Defense should be improved from Mark here. Defense should be improved just from being in the second year under Babbage too, both because of familiarity with the system, but also Babbage learning some lessons. I think that's a great point, AJ, that we should touch on here too. Just talking about the Bills as a whole going into this season, just aside from the roster stuff, is Joe Brady and Bobby Babbage back another year, and just the kind of continuity that they have with this coaching staff. Like obviously Joe Brady was getting head coaching interviews and everything last year. So for him to stick around this year, he's in a great spot with this offense. I'm very excited about and to see what Bobby Babbage is like in his second year. I'm sure that if we were to able to sit here with Bobby Babbage right now, there would be a laundry list of things that he would have wanted to do differently last year, and the self-evaluation that they do, because that's part of this whole process too. And I know Sean McDermott's talked about that, the self-evaluation after every year. What can we do better? What do we need to improve on? And that has been passed along to this staff. I'm excited with that kind of you hope for that kind of continuity, right? Like you look at a team like the Lions right now, a lot of unknowns on that offensive side of the ball, what they're not going to do because Ben Johnson's gone, right? Like this is a team who's been one of the best offensive teams in the league the last couple of years. And now it's like, okay, like, can they replicate this again without this guy? We don't have those questions this year. We have all the knowns. I feel like, what do you think? Like that feels like as much of a plus as any roster move the Bills have made this year is kind of the continuity along the staff, building on a team that, outperformed last year, honestly.
Yeah, I think that it's always huge. Continuity is always a big thing. I think Joe Brady can learn from that last instance with the Chiefs, right? That last drive there, that last series where they were on the field and Spagnuolo drew something up and the Bills offensive line had no answer for it. Josh Allen tried to make a play, and obviously we know the rest is history there. But yeah, I think always, Bobby Babbage was never a defensive coordinator in the NFL before. Joe Brady's never been an OC at the NFL level. So a year under their belt is huge. And to get them both back with the success they've had is really pivotal. And I think the guys, that's always a good thing. And that's why the Bills are such a great team, regular season, especially over the last 5-6 years, is because the continuity, they know what to expect. Brandon Beane's been here a long, long time now. Sean McDermott's been there. They got a new special teams coach and Chris Tabor taking over Matthew Smiley. So that's really the biggest change. Jamil Adai comes back as wide receivers coach. So they have Adam Henry comes back as wide receivers coach. Jamil Adai back as DB coach. So they have a lot of returning, staff members to this team, and that always bodes well, especially when you have the talent the Bills have. So we'll just see if they're able to, come through and figure it out when it matters.
Absolutely. So Steve has an interesting comment here. He says, I see a very different McDermott this year. He seems to be more transparent, and he has called some guys out at press conferences. That, like we talked about that with Cole Bishop last week specifically. I feel like he's feeling the pressure to win for the first time. Now, I don't know about the first time, but I would say from him and Bean all off season, they're feeling that pressure a little bit this off season. And I think that's a completely human and fair thing at this point. Like, especially after that last year was different than any other year. Like, we can talk about it like it's same old Bills losing in the playoffs, everything else. No, last year, this team was not like people were picking them to be second, third in the division, whether that was right or not. There were national pundits who were doing that. The Bills, it was supposed to be the reset year with the cap and everything else. And then they still get to the championship game. And we could talk about different playoff failures from the past couple years. Getting to the championship game and being within 3 points is a hell of a lot different than losing in the divisional round by 3 points. No matter which way you slice it up, when you're that, they tasted it. They're right there. And you have the disappointment of you had the ball with a chance to take the lead and you didn't do anything with it. Like, that is a whole different story than the divisional round and all the what ifs with the Bengals and everything else over the past couple years. So yeah, it makes sense to me that I have more urgency this year. If you had more urgency this year, if Sean McDermott has more urgency this year, if Josh Allen has more urgency this year, because it was there. It was within reach, actually. Like with everything we've talked about this team being one of the best in the league for all these couple of years, they haven't ever been as close to making it to where they want to be as they were last year. And that has to sit with them. And that's different. Losing in the playoffs can feel the same for fans. I feel like if you're a player, and that is a huge material difference in how you feel about the season when you're that the margins are that thin between you making a Super Bowl and not.
Yeah, it just stinks that it happened to be the Chiefs again.
Yeah,
because again, I still think that plays a mental role. I played my senior year varsity basketball. We played a Maryvale team back in Western New York, and we were better than them. But every time we played them, we couldn't beat them. We just could not get it done. We lose like right at the end of the game, and it just mentally, like even going into the games after that, like I knew it sits there, and you try to flush it out, but that's the thing that's going to be the hardest for them is that it's always the Chiefs. But I do agree with you that they were. I mean, man, I felt so confident with the ball down 3 in that game. So and they probably did too, right? And they probably never have felt more confident other than the 13 seconds moment, but they still had to get by a Bengals team that was really hot in the AFC Championship. So that was their closest they've ever been. I'm excited. It's cool that we're now, we talk about the 53-man roster, and now we can actually look at this team and talk about it. And I think this really solidifies, what this group is, what this group's going to look like, the youth that they've brought in, the free agents that they brought in that made it, some of the disappointments so far, but also some of the, great feel-good stories as well. So I'm really excited that we're at this point, and that it's finally here. And we have 53 guys on this Bills roster, give or take because of the suspensions and a couple guys on IR that are going to give it their all, and hopefully put together a story that Bills fans never forget. So I'm hoping for, another successful season where they can get over that hump.
This is a great point by Josh too. That mentality goes both ways. The Chiefs are definitely confident when they play the Bills in the playoffs. Like they're not afraid of the Bills running into them. That like specifically, I think you can know that from. I can't remember what Kelsey said leaving or entering the field. There was something a couple years ago when they were the divisional game in Buffalo. I can't remember what the comment was, but they weren't afraid to come into Buffalo in that game. They had no. Right. There was no fear, and there's not going to be fear. The thing is, it's not just the Bills. The Chiefs are going to have that mentality with every single team in the league, and they absolutely should. And you're absolutely right, AJ, that plays a lot into it for this Bills team. That it was Kansas City again. That it was Kansas City in that moment. Like they are in their own way as much as anything else. Like the Bills, I make that joke with my dad and brother all the time. We're talking about the Bills. Like the last 5 years, the Bills have beat themselves more than any team has ever beat them. Like the games they lose are their own fault. And I hate to not give credit to the other teams, but there are so many different things you could point to where you're like, we know the standard of this team, and they didn't let it. If they would have lived up to it in this game, they would have won XYZ, whatever. So we're just in that position again here. Defensive health in the playoffs from Mark here. Defensive health in the playoffs will again be the make or break factor this year. The past years they got bounced out while running out DB and LB position groups that were decimated. AJ, you and I, we talked about this again at length in our group chat last week. If our two other co-hosts were here, we could get into
Josh Allen's the only injury that matters. No. It's only Josh.
We could get into a more fervent discussion. That's the Mike Bunn impression. Mike would be on here arguing with us because you all watched Kyrie Elam in that game. I watched Kyrie Elam in that game, man. Like you watched AJ Klein 2 years ago trying to cover Travis Kelce. Like it is a point to make. I think every team does have injuries. Like the Chiefs had a really banged up offensive line last year too in that game and throughout the playoffs. And Mahomes was still the best quarterback on 3rd and long and still was the best 3rd down rate quarterback and just able to make it happen. So sometimes you just got to make it happen. But it would be nice if the Bills could walk into a playoff game in Arrowhead or in Highmark against the Chiefs or against the Ravens and just be healthy on the defensive side of the ball and at least with Josh Allen on the offensive side of the ball and see what happens.
But a healthy Milano and Bernard changes a lot. I think a Kyrie Elam that I think it was partly his fault. He obviously didn't perform, but the whole John Butler thing where they did not get along, I know that for a fact. And then
Absolutely.
also just I think the way they handled Kyer, I mean, in that moment, it's hard to have confidence going into that game, and he probably did. I mean, you always have confidence in yourself, but that's got to be a very hard spot for Kyer, and I think that's why we saw him struggle so much in that game. Just a lack of reps over the course of his career so far in Buffalo, and just how it's went in the I would say the lack of belief in him. Because he really didn't get many opportunities. I mean, he was a healthy scratch most of the time, so I think that goes both ways, but that's why this year it's more exciting. I think a Jamarcus Ingram they've shown belief in, and he's proven himself at times. And I think a Dorian Strong is a rookie that has a fresh mindset that has come in. So again, while it's concerning, they do have time to build these guys up and get them ready for those moments. And hopefully they can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also, just to touch on that, we're talking about last year's game. It was not as much Elam, but the trade of Elam for Benford, and Benford being like Benford's one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. So him being healthy going into this season, remaining healthy through the season is as important as anybody else on this roster not named Josh Allen going to that position. So Steve here, this is the last comment, and then we'll get going here. I truly believe the week 1 matchup with the Ravens is the preview of the AFC Championship game. I don't even see the Chiefs winning their division this year. I don't know if that's true, but I do think that is an important thing to note, is that the AFC West is better than it's ever been during the Mahomes reign. When you look at where Denver is, at least, well, Sean Payton thinks Denver's ready to win a Super Bowl, but another year under Bo Nix, it's a playoff team from last year. The Chargers are going to be a good team again, another year under Harbaugh. Harbaugh literally only builds winners. Like, that's just what he does. So I expect that team to be good sooner than later. And the Raiders are going to be a professional football team this year. Like, they have stability at quarterback with Geno Smith. They have a stability at head coach with Pete Carroll. It's Tom Brady is the owner. Like, they're trying to remake their image and become a different kind of organization. So it's an interesting setup in the AFC West, as opposed to the Bills in the AFC East, where like we don't expect anything from the Dolphins or Jets. The Patriots, like people have some optimism just because Drake May showed some signs and Mike Vrabel's a really good coach, but that doesn't feel like a team that's ready. They feel maybe they could be the Broncos this year, like that, like of last year. But it is when you look at the mirror of that from that perspective, and then even going to the Ravens and Bengals, who obviously have to battle it out in that division head to head. And then who knows what we're going to get from the Steelers. I don't think we got to talk about the Browns much, but the Bills compared to their peers atop the AFC, it's a lot easier road for them looking at it this year, which I don't know if you could have said that the last couple of years, specifically related to the Chiefs.
Yeah, unless the Bengals, that's because I think Ravens, Chiefs, and Bengals, that's 3. Like, I think last year you really only had to worry about the Chiefs and Ravens. I think the Bengals, if they come into fruition, I think they're a team that can be good. I'm not there with the Broncos yet. I think the West is better. I do agree with you on that. I think, like you said, Harbaugh always does a good job, right, with whatever team he's given. I think Herbert's a fine quarterback that continues to grow. Although I'm getting more questions with him as his career continues instead of answers, which is very weird. But I mean, the Broncos offense for me, they got Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims Jr., Troy Franklin, the running back situation, J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey. They need to prove to me offensively. They added Evan Ingram, who is their big addition in the offseason, but they have to prove to me offensively, because we know what they're going to get on their defense. Sean Payton and Bo Nix have to prove to me that they can work with what they have. And Sutton's a great receiver. I think he's going to have a great year in fantasy. My dad took him the other night. I told him to, because I think he's going to be really good. But I still do have questions behind them and the running backs for that Broncos offense to see what they can do. But Sean Payton, Bo Nix, if they both improve together, they could be a sneaky good team this year.
Oh man, AJ, we're talking about like real football right now. Like we're a week and a half. We're talking about division previews. We're talking about team. Like we're here.
We're all over the place, baby. I love it.
I can't wait. But yeah, so we're gonna. That's it though. We paid the bills today. We'll be back next week. We will have a full squad here, most likely, and we're gonna be talking a football game. We're gonna be talking Sunday Night Football against the Ravens and everything that comes with that. But for now, we paid the bills. Shout out to our sponsor, Picasso's Pizza. Get your pizza anywhere nationwide and in Western New York at picassospizza.net. For my co-host AJ Cybulski, this is Jake Majka. Have a great night, folks. Go Bills.